The Halo Effect and the 8 Other Business Delusions That Deceive Managers by Phil Rosenzweig. Picture this, a company everyone's obsessed with. The press won't shut up about them. The founder graces magazine covers like a rock star. Investors throw money at them. Business schools dissect their every move. They're the golden child of the corporate world, and everyone's scrambling to copy their playbook. Then, faster than you can say quarterly earnings, everything crumbles. That genius founder, now they're reckless and out of touch. That revolutionary strategy? Suddenly it's obvious it was doomed from the start. The company culture, everyone wanted to bottle and sell? Toxic, apparently. It was toxic the whole time, and we all just missed it. Wait, what just happened? Did the company really transform overnight? Or is our collective memory playing tricks on us? These wild swings in perception happen all the time in business, and they point to what author Phil Rosenzweig calls the mother of all business questions. Why do some companies thrive while others crash and burn? Sounds straightforward, right? Yet bookstores are crammed with conflicting answers, each one promising the secret formula, and somehow, lasting success still feels like catching lightning in a bottle. Here's where things get interesting. Phil Rosenzweig's book, The Halo Effect and the 8 Other Business Delusions That Deceive Managers, isn't another manual promising 5 easy steps to domination. Instead, it's more like putting on glasses that suddenly bring the whole fuzzy picture into focus. Rosenzweig, a professor who spent years working alongside top executives, noticed something unsettling. Even brilliant, experienced leaders routinely fall for the same mental traps, choosing comfortable stories over uncomfortable truths. Think of this book as your personal mythbuster for business thinking. Rosenzweig identifies 9 powerful delusions, subtle errors in logic that warp how we understand success and failure. The biggest culprit? The halo effect itself. So what's in it for you? By the time we're done, you'll spot these delusions everywhere, from boardroom presentations to breathless business articles. You'll develop a sharper, more skeptical eye for what actually drives performance. No more magic formulas. Instead, we're diving into a smarter, more nuanced way of thinking about why companies win and lose. Ready? Let's go. Let's talk about Lego. For decades, those colorful plastic bricks ruled the toy world. Then, video games showed up, kids, attention shifted, and Lego's sales started sliding. They tried expanding into things like Harry Potter merchandise. When sales tanked in 2003, the diagnosis was unanimous. Lego had lost its way and strayed from its core. The executive behind the expansion got the axe. But hold on. What exactly is a company's core anyway? How far is too far? If Lego had just kept making the same old blocks while sales declined, wouldn't critics have blasted them for being too timid? Look at General Electric, which went from light bulbs to jet engines to financial services. Nobody complained they were straying because it worked. The language we use, whether we say a company drifted aimlessly or boldly diversified, often just reflects whether things turned out well. This Lego story captures the puzzle at the heart of Rosenzweig's book. Why is understanding company performance so maddeningly difficult? We crave explanations. When a company soars, we want the secret. When it crashes, we need someone to blame. We love clean narratives, simple cause and effect. And that craving makes us sitting ducks for what Rosenzweig calls the halo effect. So what is this halo effect? It's our tendency to look at a company's bottom line, usually the financial numbers, because they seem objective and solid, and then make assumptions about everything else that's harder to measure. Things like leadership quality, company culture, strategic brilliance, or customer satisfaction. When performance is stellar, we slap halos on everything. The leadership must be visionary, the culture must be electric, the strategy must be genius. But when that same company stumbles, those halos vanish in a puff of smoke. Now the leaders seem arrogant, the culture feels toxic, the strategy looks naive. Take Cisco Systems during the late 90s tech boom. As their stock price rocketed them to briefly become the world's most valuable company, the business media practically composed love songs. John Chambers wasn't just the chief executive, he was, quote, perhaps the best on the planet. Cisco had this laser-like focus on customers. They were masters at buying and integrating other companies, and their culture was the stuff of legend. They could do no wrong. Then the dot-com bubble popped, Cisco stock collapsed, they wrote off billions in unsold inventory, and suddenly the narrative did a complete 180. Fortune magazine, which had recently gushed about Chambers, now ran headlines like, Cisco fractures its own fairy tale. That laser customer focus? Now they had a cavalier attitude that pushed people away. The brilliant acquisition strategy? Now it was an irresponsible shopping spree of unproven startups. The amazing culture? Now it reeked of arrogance and disorder. Did Cisco really transform that dramatically in 12 months? Not really. What changed was the stock price. The halo disappeared, and observers rewrote history, painting everything in darker colors based purely on the financial results. When performance bounced back later, guess what? The praise returned, celebrating their newfound discipline, even though people had praised that exact discipline during the boom years. ABB, the Swedish-Swiss engineering giant, followed the same pattern. Under Percy Barnevik in the late 80s and 90s, ABB pulled off stunning success through aggressive mergers and restructuring. Barnevik became a corporate celebrity, hailed as a visionary, Europe's answer to Jack Welch, somehow both humble and decisive. ABB's culture was dynamic and action-oriented. Their complex management structure was supposedly revolutionary, a glimpse into the future of global organization. Then the early 2000s hit, hidden problems surfaced, performance cratered, and the stock tanked. Suddenly, Barnevik went from hero to villain. The press now portrayed him as arrogant and autocratic. That bold culture? Now it looked reckless and chaotic. The innovative organizational structure? Now it seemed confusing and dysfunctional. Same company, same structure, same guy, completely different story. The only real difference? The numbers on the bottom line. This isn't just lazy journalism, it's deeply human. Psychologist Edward Thorndike discovered this bias a century ago, studying how army officers rated soldiers. Officers who generally liked a soldier rated him highly across the board. In physical fitness, intelligence, character, even when those traits had nothing to do with each other. Our brains prefer consistent pictures. We see it in politics, where liking a leader on one issue bleeds into how we rate them on everything else. We see it in customer service surveys, where a quick resolution actually makes us remember the wait time as shorter than it was. The halo effect makes figuring out what drives performance incredibly tricky, because the things we think are causes, like great culture or leadership, are often just descriptions colored by the results we're already seeing. This is just the first of 9 delusions Rosenzweig identifies. Let's quickly run through the others, because they often team up with the halo effect to cloud our thinking. Delusion 2, correlation and causality. Classic mistake. Two things happening together doesn't mean one caused the other. Does high employee satisfaction create high performance? Sounds logical. But maybe high performance, being on a winning team, creates satisfaction. Research suggests the second effect is actually stronger. Without studying things over time, we easily confuse correlation with cause. Remember, ice cream sales and crime both spike in summer. Does ice cream cause crime? Nope, the heat influences both. Tons of business studies stumble into this trap. Delusion 3, single explanations. We love simplicity, so we pin a company's fate on one thing: visionary leadership, or killer culture, or customer obsession. Reality is messier. Multiple factors matter, and they're interconnected. One study says market focus explains a quarter of performance. Another claims social responsibility explains 40%. Another says human resources is key. Can we just add these up? Probably not. Companies good at one thing tend to be good at others too. These studies often inflate their favorite factor's importance. Delusion 4. Connecting the winning dots. This happens when researchers only study successful companies and look for commonalities. Sure, they might all have strong leaders or customer focus, but maybe unsuccessful companies have those things too. Without comparing winners to losers, you can't identify what truly makes the difference. Tom Peters and Bob Waterman's famous In Search of Excellence fell right into this trap, picking excellent companies and then listing their positive traits, which were likely influenced by the halo effect anyway. Delusion 5. Rigorous research. The illusion created when studies brag about mountains of data, thousands of articles reviewed, hundreds of interviews conducted, dozens of filing cabinets filled, sounds impressive and scientific. But if the underlying data is contaminated, maybe by halo effect bias from press articles or people's faulty memories, then quantity doesn't matter. Stacking up flawed data doesn't get you closer to truth. Books like Built to Last, What Really Works, and Good to Great all emphasize their exhaustive research to create this illusion. Delusion 6. Lasting success. We love the fantasy of building something permanent, a company that stays great forever. Books promise the blueprint for eternal dominance. But Rosenzweig argues lasting success is mostly a myth, usually only recognized looking backward. Most high flyers eventually come back down to earth. Why? Competition. Rivals copy you. New players enter. Technology shifts. Economist Joseph Schumpeter called this the perennial gale of creative destruction. Many excellent companies from those famous books actually underperformed the market in the years after publication. The promise of a forever great company sounds wonderful but isn't realistic. Delusion 7. Absolute performance. We often judge companies on their own actions, as if they exist in a bubble. But business is almost always relative. Your success depends on how you stack up against competitors, not just your own improvements. Remember Kmart? During the 90s, Kmart actually got better in many ways, improving inventory management and technology. Their inventory efficiency jumped 32%. By their own measures, they improved. But Walmart improved even faster. Kmart fell further behind and eventually went bankrupt. Ignoring competition paints a misleading picture. Delusion 8. The wrong end of the stick. This happens when we see a trait in successful companies and assume the trait caused the success. Jim Collins argued in Good to Great that his successful companies were like hedgehogs, knowing one big thing and pursuing it relentlessly. Maybe so, but does being a hedgehog guarantee success? Think about the racetrack. The biggest winners probably made large bets on long shots, hedgehog style. Does that mean betting on long shots is smart? Probably not. Many more hedgehogs went home broke. The cautious fox who spread bets around might have done better on average. Just because winners share a trait doesn't mean that trait guarantees winning. It might even be a high-risk approach that usually fails. Delusion 9. Organizational physics. The belief that business follows predictable, unchanging laws like physics. If we could just discover these immutable laws, we could apply them anywhere and guarantee success. Books promising formulas or blueprints play on this desire for certainty. But business isn't physics. It involves people, choices, competition, luck, and constant change. There are no universal laws guaranteeing outcomes. Pretending there are feels reassuring, but ultimately misleads. So if these bestsellers, despite their claims of scientific breakthroughs, are riddled with delusions, why are they so popular? Rosenzweig suggests they work brilliantly as stories. They offer simple answers to complex questions. They inspire hope. They tap into classic narratives, like rags to riches tales. They give managers a sense of control and a clear path forward, even if it's an illusion. Often, dressing these stories up in scientific language makes them more appealing, like Richard Feynman's cargo cult science analogy, where people meticulously copy the appearance of science without understanding the substance, hoping for magical results. But are these comforting stories harmless? Rosenzweig warns they can be dangerous. Believing in lasting success might breed complacency. Thinking performance is absolute might make you ignore competitors until too late. Grabbing the wrong end of the stick might lead to risky strategies without understanding the downside. And believing in organizational physics might make you apply simplistic formulas where careful judgment is needed. These delusions can focus managers on the wrong things and trigger bad decisions. If we can't trust simple formulas and success stories, what's left? How should we think about achieving high performance? Rosenzweig suggests returning to basics, but with a clear understanding of uncertainty. He points to Michael Porter's framework. Performance depends on strategy and execution. Strategy means making choices to differentiate from rivals. Which markets to enter, what activities to perform, how to position against competition. Crucially, strategic choices are always inherently risky. Why? The future is uncertain. Customer reactions are unpredictable. Competitors react in unexpected ways. Technology can disrupt entire industries, often catching established players off guard. And even your own organization's ability to execute a new strategy is never guaranteed. Many bestsellers downplay this risk, suggesting any focused strategy will work if communicated well, or obsessing over getting the right people first and figuring out strategy later. Rosenzweig argues this ignores the tough reality that some strategic choices are simply better than others, and even the best involve uncertainty. Success often looks brilliant looking back, but at the time, it was usually a calculated gamble. Execution is about implementing those choices effectively, mobilizing resources, building products, serving customers, managing operations. While execution might seem more controllable since it happens inside the company, it's still uncertain. Organizations are complex social systems, not machines. What works perfectly in one company might flop elsewhere. That's why even solid studies find specific management practices explain only a modest slice of performance differences. Rosenzweig warns against vague calls for flawless execution. It sounds good but means nothing without specifics. Better to identify the few key execution priorities crucial for your strategy. Also, watch out for blaming poor execution when the real problem might be a flawed strategy. It's easier to demand people work harder than to question the fundamental direction. Rosenzweig highlights leaders like Robert Rubin, former Goldman Sachs head and Treasury Secretary, Andy Grove at Intel, and Guerrino De Luca at Logitech, as examples of clear-eyed thinking. Rubin explicitly embraced probabilistic thinking, constantly evaluating odds and understanding that even smart bets sometimes lose. Grove navigated Intel through multiple strategic inflection points, making high-stakes technology bets fully aware of the risks, famously believing, "Only the paranoid survive." De Luca emphasizes making conscious strategic choices, including saying no often, focusing on specific execution priorities, and constantly fighting complacency, knowing success is never guaranteed. These managers don't rely on magic formulas. They don't expect success to land in their laps just because they followed a blueprint. They engage with messy, uncertain reality, make the best judgments they can, push hard for execution, and understand that luck plays a part. They strive not for certainty, but for improving their odds in a competitive world. Phil Rosenzweig's The Halo Effect is like someone turning on the lights in a room full of smoke and mirrors. It doesn't hand you a tidy checklist for becoming the next corporate superstar, and honestly, some people might find that frustrating. But what it offers is arguably more valuable: intellectual honesty and a framework for clearer, sharper thinking. The most powerful insight for me is the relentless exposure of the halo effect itself. Once you truly get how easily our perception of specifics like leadership or culture gets tinted by overall performance, you start spotting it everywhere, not just in business magazines, but in sports commentary, political analysis, even how we judge people in everyday life. It forces a level of skepticism that's often missing when we consume success and failure stories. We become less likely to blindly worship winners or harshly judge losers without considering context, competition, and plain luck. Rosenzweig isn't claiming things like good leadership, strong culture, or customer focus don't matter. He's saying our measurement and understanding of these things are often deeply flawed, tangled up with the performance outcomes they're supposed to explain. This distinction is crucial. It pushes us away from vague praise and toward concrete actions, specific strategies, and measurable execution, things less vulnerable to the halo's glow. The book's critique of popular business bestsellers is sharp but fair. It reminds us that books promising secrets, or laws of success, often prioritize compelling storytelling over scientific rigor. While inspiration has its place, relying on potentially flawed frameworks built on delusions like lasting success or absolute performance can mislead managers. The real world of business is dynamic, competitive, and uncertain. Pretending otherwise doesn't help you navigate it. So how can you apply these ideas? First, become a more critical consumer of business stories. When you read about a successful company, ask yourself, are these explanations, great culture, visionary leader, truly independent causes? Or could they be halos reflecting the success itself? Look for concrete evidence beyond glowing descriptions. Second, when evaluating your own work or your team's performance, consciously separate outcomes from the decision-making process. Ask, was the decision sound based on what we knew at the time, even if the outcome wasn't ideal? What can we learn about improving how we make choices and execute them, regardless of luck? Third, embrace uncertainty. Recognize that strategy involves calculated risks, not guarantees. Focus on making the best possible choices to improve your odds, rather than hunting for a non-existent foolproof plan. Similarly, focus execution on specific, measurable priorities that matter most for your strategy, rather than vaguely trying to execute better. Ultimately, the halo effect encourages a shift from seeking simple formulas to cultivating wisdom, the ability to think critically, understand context, weigh probabilities, and act decisively despite uncertainty. It's less glamorous than following a supposed blueprint to greatness, but it's grounded in reality, and likely far more effective in the long run. That was our deep dive into the halo effect by Phil Rosenzweig. We've explored the core delusions shaping how we perceive business success and failure. While this summary gives you a strong sense of the book's critical insights, it's really just scratching the surface. The true value comes from engaging directly with Rosenzweig's arguments and examples. If the idea of cutting through the hype and thinking more clearly about what truly drives performance resonates with you, I highly encourage picking up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning concepts, it's about sharpening your own judgment and becoming a wiser observer of the business world around you. You can find a link to the book in the description below. And if you found this exploration helpful, please show some support by liking this summary and subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. We bring summaries of impactful books like this regularly, aiming to help you build your knowledge and perspective. Join us next time as we unpack another powerful book together. Let's keep learning and growing.